Hey YouTube audience, welcome back to Nerdwood Order's 31 Days of Halloween. We actually went through a pretty interesting one. So this is a movie that I've gotten a lot of recommendations for by other people that are into horror. This is the original French Pascal's Martyrs. Now, you made a very, very clear point. Pascal's Martyrs really feels like two separate movies.
Right, yeah. The first half, there's one particular point just after they get outside where it could easily be, that's the end of the movie, wonderful horror movie. But then continuing past there, it turns, in my mind, turns into more of a psychological thriller than a horror movie.
Yeah, and I completely agree. We have a lot of supernatural elements, it feels like, almost just things that really a horror movie has. You know, those moments where you can't quite tell exactly if what you're seeing is what's going on. Truly graphic violence, terror, screaming, actually seeing people, really go through all these debilitating things that we find common in horror movies that literally just ends at a certain point. After that halfway mark, it's like abandon all hope. The movie is going to go in a different direction. There isn't going to be any more screaming or carrying on, Now things are completely different from this point on. And it was good. It was effective. It made for an interesting movie, but it definitely did not feel like a horror movie in the second half.
Right, yeah, I loved the movie, but I don't feel like I can count it as just a horror movie.
Yes, and I definitely agree. What do you think of the characters in this?
The last half, essentially, the characters that came in were very interesting. Some felt almost unnecessary. Some felt almost unnecessary, but I did like the back and forth between Anne and Lucy.
Yes.
Anna.
Yeah, Anna and Lucy, they're back and forth, and some of those moments where you see that one's clearly more invested than the other, that being Anna over Lucy. Lucy, she has a clear detachment. And I know we're getting a little bit into spoiler territory here, but this is all stuff you can read on the back of the DVD cover for the most part, or just a simple look through the trailer. Their interactions are really good, and that's what makes that middle point, that moment when the first half of the movie ends, really impactful, because we got that big changing. I don't know if I really felt that the Anna character was fleshed out well enough.
Not really, no.
Yeah.
Which is... The last half of the movie was good, but not having Anna not be as fleshed out as she could have been, which would have made the movie too long. It almost needed to be a separate movie for that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that last half would have been more impactful.
And that's the problem, is that obviously with any horror movie, or even with a psychological thriller, even if they went that route, psychological thrillers typically get a 2-hour mark versus the 90 minutes that horror movies get. But still, it would have been too long to try to really flesh out Anna's character. The problem is, we don't care so much about her character. The second half of the movie, while it's interesting, you don't really care about the character. You want to know the progression of the story. And it was okay. I mean, I still watched it. I still wanted to watch it. I wanted to know what was going to happen. But because the character had no depth, I was like, I don't care about her. I don't.
Right, which is why having known more about her from a previous standpoint would have been... I feel it could have made the difference between it being psychological thriller and back to that horror aspect, because you've got more of an attachment to the character.
Yes, absolutely. Now, Lucy, on the other hand, that was a very compelling character. The amount of screen time she had for the amount that she delivered to the film was really, really explosive. Like, that whole first half, you just want to know what's going on with Lucy, what Lucy has been through, and what the hell's going on in her head. And you get it, but I love the way it tries to play mind games in the beginning.
Right, and that's something I love when it happens in horror movies that I know a lot of people don't like. Whether you're doing it consciously or realizing you're doing it subconsciously, trying to connect the dots, figure out what exactly is going on, what this character stands for.
Yeah.
I love that. I loved sitting there trying to figure out what the thing is that's essentially attached to Lucy,
Mm-hmm.
what it was doing. I liked having to figure that out.
And yeah, that was great. Having that piece of a puzzle that you really kind of have to solve is great. And I do understand what you mean. People don't like to have to unravel it. And that brings me to another point about this movie that I think is very important. So Pascal's Martyr is a French film, and it's very important that if you are going to watch it for the first time, you watch it in the French audio with English subtitles. I actually watched the movie raw with no subtitles the first 3 times I watched it, and had no idea what was going on, but I still felt like I could follow the movie because this movie is very much imagery driven. You're just left with the emotion that you can see on the characters. There's not so much back and forth talking, and there are some scenes where almost you get distracted by what's going on the screen because the characters are being so noisy.
Right.
There's an opening sequence where we see the family there when they're showing that house. The family at the breakfast table is just so noisy. I'm like, what's the point of the scene? Don't think that this movie is exactly an easy watch, though. Don't go into it thinking that. We like horror movies, but for a normal person, this isn't going to be an easy watch film, I think.
It can be.
I feel like if people got past a certain point, almost anyone could watch the movie all the way through. But I feel like the way they build, and because the build-up is so different than the payoff, there are people who are going to watch that build-up and they're going to be like so far up the ride before they're like, I want to get off. I don't want to watch anymore. I don't want to see where it's going to go. And that does the movie some favors, but it also hurts the movie because I feel like the payoff, while it's great and I loved it, it does not pay off for people who are expecting things with that buildup. Like you clearly, when you were watching it, you had even said out loud how you were thinking the movie was going to go, and to an extent, I thought that would have been a better direction to take the movie than the direction it went.
Yeah, and I also think that people that go in expecting just a horror movie
We'll be disappointed.
will be disappointed because it stops being horror after that mark, and you'll know it when you see it because, I mean, as soon as I saw it, I was like, this could be the end of the movie, and I would be perfectly content.
Mhm.
I probably would have given it a better rating than what I'm thinking of
Giving it overall.
overall.
Yeah, and that's why I think it'll be important when we do give that rating to maybe do it almost 3 ratings. What we give it as a horror, what we give it as a psychological thriller, and then our overall, what we give the movie as a rating. And to that extent, I also think that this movie almost creates a new genre, in my opinion, because it does try so well to blend the horror with the psychological thriller, but it does let us down at some points. It tries to be more of kind of a terrifying thriller. It's not just a psychological thriller. It's not just meant to, just have that suspense. It's supposed to really terrify you, reach into that part of your brain that you can't really control and put this fearful thought in there, especially the last sequence. Because what does happen throughout the whole movie, you're sitting there and you're like, okay, so what is it? What is the secret? What is this end thing? And then that is just so maddening. It causes what it causes. So I think to that end, the implications of the movie are more than just a psychological thriller. It's supposed to be something truly terrifying. But the execution on a micro budget, it's good, but it's not good enough.
Yeah. Yeah, there were a few things that they could have done without spending much more,
Mm-hmm.
and a few things that they could have taken out that would have saved them some money in it.
Yes. Not much in the way of effects in this movie. Very, very simple effects, but they're good for what they are. The shoot 'em up sequence, for instance, I thought that was more than bloody and just completely shocking and unexpected than anything I'd seen in normal American cinema up to that point. It's hard to think of like a violent movie where there's a shoot-up scene that quickly and that unexpected. But on the other hand, some of the things that you expect more of this effects-driven stuff from, they just didn't go very far with it.
And I know people will probably think that this is weird, but I loved that scene where, she was going through the house, and I personally thought that was phenomenally done and didn't feel any sort of regret or remorse towards the characters being killed or any.
Yeah,
anything against them dying.
Yes, and that's despite the fact that they try to make them seem like a happy, normal family. Despite the fact they give us this image that, oh, this is just a normal French family. They're doing nothing wrong. They're going about their daily lives. Yet for some reason, and without them even saying it, because they technically don't say why they're at that house until later, without them saying it, you just don't have any remorse for these people dying because it's all part of the plan in a sense, I think. It's just like Heath Ledger's Joker, like say, people a bunch of soldiers get blown up. It's all part of the plan. Nobody panics. And this was that situation. It was shocking. It's visually shocking, but it's all part of the plan. You expect people to die, and it was great because there was no remorse. There was no reason to feel bad. You just could enjoy the scene for all of the beautiful brutality that it was, and that was good. What did we think about the big reveal, the very beginning of the second half, as it were, when she's on the actual phone talking with someone and she discovers the actual entrance, almost by accident, but just because for some reason something's falling over and she just happens to discover it. That moment, I think, still almost horror, but it's definitely in the psychological thriller. But that's a horrifying thing. That moment where you're like, oh, dark tunnel. Where is this going? What's going to happen? Yeah. I thought that was great.
And even though that cutting off point that I talked about happens a few minutes, or I don't remember how much earlier, but
it's a little bit
earlier than this, it still doesn't quite hit psychological thriller till people arrive.
Yes.
Okay. Because the way she discovers it and what she discovers in that area, I think still fills that horror aspect, as well as what happens to come after before anyone else is involved.
What do we think of the villains? The operators, as it were.
I know that they're important, and I have no problem with them being there, but I don't have any feeling one way or another towards the characters themselves.
Okay.
There's no necessarily need to keep or get rid of them in any degree or in any terms of the way that they acted.
And what about Mademoiselle, the leader of the operators?
So without her, then the movie definitely didn't need this other half. Without her,
she carries it. She carries that other half, and she's the entire ending of the movie in a way. And she's very important. She's very powerful. And she's like Darth Vader in a way, in my opinion, because she has such little screen time. She's there for a total of 3 scenes, I think, and one of those scenes is a phone call. Yeah. And it's great because when she's on scene is when the movie does feel most psychologically terrifying, because you can tell that this person just does not care about this other human being. She's making it simple, plain terms. I don't care about you. I care about what you're going to do for me. And you're going to do that whether you want to or not. You don't have a choice in doing what I want. You're going to do that. And I'm just telling you as a courtesy. I don't have to tell you. I didn't even have to come down here. And that's all conveyed in just the way she acts and the way she talks down to Anna.
And I love the fortune teller feel to her.
Yes,
She looked very much like she could be one of those people that you see at a carnival telling fortunes.
I hate to drag Disembodied's ambiguous, slightly racist way of thinking into this, but gypsy was the terminology that he used to describe Mademoiselle, and it's spot on. Wouldn't you agree, Disembodied voice?
Zoltar, we'll tell your fortune.
And it's perfect because that's true. And but she's still terrifying woman. I would not want to meet that actress. Like, I wouldn't believe that she's a person.
Meet Zoltar's wife. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah, even more terrifying. Exactly.
Your fortune is torture. Sucks to be you.
Okay. So moving back all the way around here, because we talked about pretty much every facet of this movie, I think. I want to break it down real quick. Acting. What do we think overall on the actors in this movie?
Overall, I think that everyone did a pretty good job. Kept their characters, what they were saying, it kept it necessary to a degree, which with some actors, you just will automatically pick up on things that's like, that shouldn't be here, or they just ruined that line.
Yeah.
Didn't feel that at all.
Gotcha.
Granted, I don't know much French, so
True. Yeah, I mean, it's harder when you're watching a foreign film because you're reading the subtitles and you're listening to the dialogue, but you're not listening as closely to where someone is holding back a line or not talking correctly.
Right, you're just listening for inflection.
Yes, absolutely. And to that extent, I agree. The acting is just, it's great for what it is. There's nothing that feels like it's not delivered correctly. Certainly the Anna and Lucy take their roles very seriously. I think for young actresses to have portrayed themselves the way they did, spot on. I don't know what they went on to after this, but I hope it's great things. What did we think of the overall timing and pacing of the film?
I thought it worked. Again, Americans that watch this expecting the type of horror film that they're used to, like an American horror movie, it'll be too slow. But if you go in expecting a slower pace, a foreign horror movie, because that's how most of them go. If you look at Japanese horror movies or French horror movies, they all build up.
Mhm.
It's not from the start your breakneck pace, which I loved about it. I thought it was perfect.
Yeah, and I agree. All right, so our breakdown, our three grading systems here. So as a horror movie,
Am I just grading the first half?
Yeah, you're just grading the first half. You're grading the horror components of it in this moment.
I would give it a 9.5 out of 10 then.
Graded as a horror movie,
As a
9.5 out of 10. As a psychological thriller,
Not quite as high. I'd stick it at 8. It's still really good, but I wasn't expecting psychological thriller. So if I went in looking for that and they had that build-up that we talked about, then yeah, I would have given it more.
okay. Horror component, I give it, I'm going to say an 8.5. It definitely had a lot of those great horror components, but because for me it just felt like some things were a little two-dimensional. As far as psychological, I'm going to go a little higher. I'm going to go 9.5 on the psychological aspect, and that's just that's personal background. That's because I feel like the message of the movie is very frightening, and that's why that really just terrifies me. I'm like, okay, psychological thriller, definitely. Overall rating, what do we give Pascal's
Overall
Martyrs?
rating, I would give it an 8 out of 10.
I agree. 8 out of 10. Solid 8 out of 10. Pascal's Martyrs is I won't say must-see, but definitely if you're a horror fan, see it. If you're a psychological thriller fan, see it. If you want to just see how far you can push yourself to watch a very, very twisted movie, then see it. All right, guys. Nerd Word Order, of course.
Ian, so I've been on a few at this point.
Few at this point. This is Ian. We'll go ahead and put his Twitter up if you want to give him a follow. If you like the video, guys, you can go ahead and give us a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give us a thumbs down. But you better tell us in the comments why